Hello and welcome to the Xenothesis podcast. This episode 30, we're covering Chapter 7 of Part 1 Low of Book 2 Adulthood-Rites of Octavia Butler's Xenogenesis trilogy. My name is Richard Acton, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host.
Michael Klinker. Hi, everyone. 30 episodes, Richard. I just realized, really nice round number. Yeah, it's been a while since we've been doing this.
Yeah. Well, so it's definitely more than a year now, isn't it? Because it would be, 20-something episodes for a year.
Yeah. And the books are getting more and more interesting. Things are speeding up. We're getting more and more interesting protagonists.
Yes, and this chapter we see a potentially life-threatening thing to one of our relatively new characters.
Yeah,
That's exploring some interesting stuff. This book is the longest of the three in the trilogy, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of, do you know like numbers in the pages? Paper copy maybe. Because
I have forgotten the total word count. I have to check my my file. I don't have.
Yeah, word count is probably better because if you have pages and different size fonts, and it's gonna be a bit of a mess.
Yeah. I mentioned that when bit of an aside on this because I did mention last week potentially putting that stuff up on the website. The word counts. I haven't done it yet, but I got started. But one of the things I was equivocating over was because my code that does the word counts and all that stuff starts from the raw text files. I've just got .txt files of the ebooks so I bought them from Amazon and then stripped off the DRM because fuck the DMCA.
Hell yeah.
So then I have them in a proper format in EPUB formats and in text format, so I can start from that and do my analysis on it. But I was thinking about whether or not, like, what starting point I could put in the Git repo that backs up the website, and not have that be a copyright issue because I can't put the raw text files up there because otherwise.
Yes, that's correct.
But I think I can get away with putting the tokenized version of the book as a data file, so I can take all the individual words and have them annotated as like which part of the chapter they're from, and I think that counts as sufficiently transformative and as sufficiently different from the other one as to be adequate, based on a legal decision in a Google versus Perfect 10 court case.
Fair enough. I guess you could just have the word count for each chapter as well in form of like a database or table, basically, and maybe that would be sufficient. I mean, that won't actually go. I'm just saying, what can I put in? What can I put in the public Git repo that backs up the website and not have it be a copyright violation? Because it's easier for me to have all those things be a product of the graphs and everything just derived from a source file of some kind. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So I guess for all the listeners, you can look forward to the graphs that Richard's gonna make, and I'm so helping with it.
But yeah, that was an immediate aside.
Yeah, nice tangent from the beginning. Something to look forward to. But I guess let's go with my predictions for the chapter 7, the final chapter of this section, of this part. Sorry. So my prediction from the last recording was that some time passed and Tino decided to stay in the village. Maybe we learn more about Phoenix. Akin learns more about Tino, and Tino learns more about Lilith. And I thought maybe some other people from Phoenix will arrive.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, I wasn't sure about their intentions, but I thought maybe there would be some situation that more people from Phoenix may arrive. Maybe I thought Tino's parents, but it seems that I missed the mark on this one.
I mean, there were some more people from Phoenix showing up, but yes. Not in
not in a good nature
a good way.
Yeah. So, oh well.
Shall we launch into the chapter summary then?
Absolutely. So we start the chapter back to Akin, learning that he did his first steps with Tino, and the fact that he started to trust Tino more. Fully, to be honest, even though Dichan warned him in the past. And at the very beginning of the chapter, we get spoiled of what is to come. Akin and Tino being alone when the resistors come looking for children to steal. the whole story of the raiders appearing starts with Tino going to cut wood for the guest house. We learn about the boundaries of the village law. After breaking his axe, Tino started to take Akin with him because Tino couldn't tell what was a tree and not part of the space-going entity. And
so I think just to he tried to cut down a tree and broke his axe because it wasn't a tree. So apparently this is like very resistant.
Yeah, it seems to be. So whatever the ship is made of, then. So this is what the one thing we've been sort of told by side is that the ship's resistant, even though it's organic, it's super resistant, stronger than the metal.
Yep, or at least enough to put a solid nick in the blade of your axe.
Yeah. I wonder. I mean, in nature there are some materials that have this sort of tensile strength, I would say, maybe, or toughness. Toughness is probably better. That would, obviously we can talk about minerals, but minerals don't really match here. Although, if the Oankali can manipulate the organic the chemistry so that it produces diamond-like surface.
Yeah. I mean, so it could be some kind of effectively like a grown nano-engineered fiber of some kind, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's probably more in your area of expertise than mine, but like mineralization in bones, right? It's kind of it's producing some kind of external structure to the cells that has useful physical properties.
Well, that's what I was thinking about. It's just the fact is that usually if those things involve the position of some sort of mineral or some sort of compound, that's that structure is very lattice-like, you would say. So things like obviously in bones, as you mentioned, calcium phosphate is hydroxyapatite. That's what we call it. Is what what the bone gives the bone the its strength, and it's because it forms crystals basically. So the question is now what do we have here? It could be might be more more futuristic, let's say, as you mentioned, nanotechnology, some sort of polymer like material that get deposited on the outer surface or maybe within the cells to make between the cells like a cell matrix, I would say, that gives it like a thick, let's say, boundary between the soft inside and the tough outside. But who knows?
I mean, I know there's polymers that kind of have long range covalent connections in biological systems, but I'm just thinking if there's anything that's like a really large scale structure that's covalently connected. Because I mean, if it's something like bone, it's ionic, right? It's crystalline.
Yes.
But I don't know of any like really macroscopic structures that are a continuous molecule in the sense of all being covalently bonded. I don't know.
I mean, one thing is plastics, right? Plastics are basically covalently bond, like repeated monomers of something like carbon-based or sulfur-based compounds. So,
but like a biologically produced version of that.
Well, I mean, you say that. I think that could be probably one of the reasons. It's one potential explanation to it, because we have bacteria who are able to produce diesel, right? Or so basically you can make an organism to produce a long chain carbon compound. So technically it would be possible for a advanced or a species, or even for us to do something like this, right? So it's just we don't need more plastic because there's enough plastic on the planet. But if you wanted to, potentially there is possibility.
And there are things like biofilms, which are mainly more kind of sugar-based.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So...
That's speculation aside.
Yeah, speculation aside. we have a bit of description of what Lo is, right? We were told, Lo being the name of the village, but also the space entity. And the Lo entity shaped itself according to the desires of its occupants and the patterns of the surrounding vegetation. Its bite and its organs were better protected than any living thing native to Earth. No axe or machete could mark it. Until it was older, no native vegetation would grow within its boundaries. So it's like very selfish organism that basically, as you said in previous episode, camouflages itself to look like the surroundings, but really doesn't allow the surroundings to penetrate its area, I would say.
It's interesting that it's so kind of a guarding of its border at this point, right?
Yeah.
Maintaining a separation despite doing the mimicry. But I don't know if previously we've introduced the name of the village or / entity, Lo.
I don't believe so.
Because I don't think we've done it in the podcast, but I can't remember if it's come up in the book before. But the name of the village is Lo, which also kind of applies to the organism that is the village, sort of.
And also the part 1 of the book is called Lo, so...
Indeed, yeah.
So it sort of makes sense, but then again, I don't know. I cannot think like if it was called before that or is just called the trading village.
But we now know where the name of the part comes from at any rate.
So this was the reason also why Lilith and the rest of the village would set up the gardens so far away from the village, because no vegetation would grow within the boundary of the village itself. And as it happened, Lo could provide good food from its own body with help of the Oankali stimulation, but most of the humans preferred not to be dependent, understandably, right? In case something happens. Akin thus was taken with Tino to help to understand and show where he can cut and how to avoid certain dilapidated gardens, because some people would not be as good as taking care of their gardens. So, and Tino had the tendency to just slash away from anything that stands in front of him.
They seem to have quite a fondness for leaving things looking undisturbed, right? They don't. There's no sort of clear delineation between the forest and their planted areas.
Yeah, and as we were told before by Lilith in the previous chapters, that there are some plants that keep invading the garden. So maybe that's another thing like that.
Yeah, just getting overgrown with other stuff that they can't keep on top of.
Akin, or any construct in fact, could not help to knowing the boundary of the village, because every sensation they experienced was different. It felt like not home. We were told about that initially it made Akin cringe because the vegetation would touch him. It wasn't feeling familiar, but he desired it more. Actually started to be, instead of being cringe, but like he desired more to go out because of its strangeness. He would deliberately let Tino walk further than necessary to experience new things. So poor Tino, being made to walk.
Yeah, I think I can empathize with this sensation, right? It's the kind of the comfort of the familiar, but then it's interesting to experience the new
things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
going on the undiscovered paths, just steering away from the walked path that usually people take to maybe discover something new. Fully understandable. We also are told that no matter what, Akin could not stop himself from stuffing things into his mouth. He would tell Tino things like he shouldn't cut a sapling because it may produce some fruits in the future, or the leaves are good to eat. To Tino's surprise, Akin never poisoned himself, even though Tino would say, like, by now you should have poisoned yourself like 10 times over. But he understood why. Akin's great tongue that looked like big grey slag, as Tino described, according to Tino, was the means for Akin to study the world. After some time, it seems that he got accustomed to that behavior, and it didn't bother him when Akin, even probed him. Lilith was worried that maybe he was concealing disgust or resentment, but neither Akin or Nikanji, in fact, couldn't find any such concealed feelings. Nikanji told Akin that Tino is more adaptable than most humans, very similarly to Lilith.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also told that Tino calls Akin his son.
Well,
and
not necessarily his, but
just son.
Just son.
Yeah, just son, yeah. Nikanji thinks that he was just looking for some family for a home, and he found one.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like Tino's a pretty decent guy, right? He's just looking for somewhere to belong.
I think he still, though, if I was him, I would still probably feel a bit of a grudge to Lilith for breaking that great bow.
Yeah, and that would be definitely a little bit of a sore point, if you ask me.
But considering that, so were we told, like we were mentioned, it was mentioned in the previous chapters, or maybe in the previous book, that there were some animals that were modified to survive.
Yeah, I believe they mentioned that.
The radioactive planet, right? But like, we were not told about anything that like they could have been like anybody hunting for animals or anything. Most of it is just talking about, vegetables that were like, or fruits grown in the gardens that have, like, for example, the now extinct pork flavor, right? But we weren't told about any hunting of animals at all.
Well, I think it's assumed sort of tacitly that the humans were hunting animals to some degree, right? I mean, the fact that they had bows would suggest that they'd be hunting what they might be able to catch in the forest.
So, but we were talking about the resistor villages, not the trading villages, because the trading villages mostly focus on growth, plant growth.
The trading villages, I think, wouldn't hunt because the Oankali seem very down on that idea, right?
Yeah.
They were always trying to stop them from fishing and so on when they were up in the the jungle practice area and on the ship.
Would they?
Even though they provided them with the alternative food, but they weren't sort of actively trying to stop them, but they kind of clearly disapproved when they were trying to fish.
Okay, fair enough. So we are told a bit more about Tino and his life in the village now. As Tino cut down a small tree, Akin wondered why the man enjoyed it. Because he didn't like gardening, we're told. He didn't like to write down his pre-war memories to preserve knowledge for the later generation. That's one thing that people would do in the trade villages, just write down all their knowledge or memories for preservation for future. The constructs wrote down about their lives in the village, and even the Oankali themselves, although through humans, would tell their stories to be written down. Tino was interested in none of that. He would cut wood, build things, help with fish farm or animal farms, construct animal farms. He built canoes and traveled with Ajis when she visited other villages, even though she could swim underwater. Again, it was surprised how quickly Tino accepted her. He was fascinated by her pregnancy, especially when both her and Akin tried to tell him what it was like to touch the growing child and feel its response, its recognition, or its intense curiosity. They started trying to persuade Nikanji into trying to stimulate the sensation for Tino, although initially resisting the idea. When the moment Tino asked for it, Nikanji immediately relented. Such a soft spot.
So this is simulating the sensation of
growing child in the womb.
Yeah, I think that was it, and also of being able to communicate with it in some sense.
Yes.
Because that's another interesting thing there, because the Oankali have this this chemical communication thing, which means they have much more like interface with their child before it's born.
Yep.
Which is a super interesting idea.
They can check anything is wrong or anything is as everything is going fine. It's incredible. Like you can check something like this.
And I think I get Tino's enjoyment in cutting down trees with an axe. That's a fun activity. And then making something from the result, right? It's
like if you. Rewarding. I think it's much of the fact that like it's some people I think enjoy, including myself as well, and you from what sound of it, creating something with your own hands, right? So you start with the raw material and then you do something with it. And I think it also helped Tino to get his mind off things that we learn in a second action, in fact. So once Nikonj relented, the book says it gave Tino the sensation and held him longer that was necessary. That was good, Akin thought. Tino needed to be touched more. And this is why maybe Tino enjoyed doing things with hands to get his mind off things. Akin noticed that humans needed the physical contact, and because of the Oankali, this contact would often be disturbed because they wouldn't be able to touch each other without the presence of an Uloi. As with Lilith, Tino would spend days frustrated, screaming or not talking to Nikonj, and sometimes leaving the village for several days to cool off. Akin couldn't understand why was it so important to impart this behavior, like the fact that people cannot touch each other without the presence of an Uloi, knowing how much humans needed the physical touch. Eventually, everything went back to normal. Tino was very attached to the family and content most of the time, but like Lilith, poisonously resentful and bitter sometimes. The kids worried that he might leave, but the adults seemed certain he would stay. And I think that what might be the reason why he jumped into like the physical work, because just to take his mind off things.
Perhaps. Yeah, but I mean, it's an interesting thing for Akin to be wondering here, because it's he's noticed that the humans need the physical touch, and that the Uloi, being the kind of intermediary between them, is preventing them from having it. But Akin himself is half Oankali, so we've got this interesting perspective on both sides of that. I
think it's the first time. Yeah, I think this is where really the constructs stood now are the true bridge between the Oankali and the humans. They understand the human nature and they understand the Oankali nature, and I think that's the reason why they can really understand that they need the physical touch. Humans need the physical touch, but also understand the Oankali nature and the reasons why they do it. Although I guess it's a bit weird for me, and it's also, I think, controlling the fact that Uloi, the Oankali, made it so that humans cannot touch each other. It wouldn't be a problem like making them infertile without the Uloi presence, fair enough. But like that physical touch sometimes is needed, and
I mean, I assume it's a component of creating kind of an intimacy between the three parties in what is required for an Oankali sexual relationship, right? Because it requires all three of you to be there. But if the two of you can have intimacy on your own, then you don't need the Uloi there, right? So it's like kind of like their means of transitioning to the three person reproductive unit from a two-person reproductive unit, right? They want a sort of a family module that requires all three parties for its intimacy to function. Which from the perspective of their biology, that makes sense.
Because they already are used to the three person relationships or sexual reproductive units, but in the same time, like it's in a way hard for humans, but then again, multi-people relationship, was it polyamorous? No, polyamory. Polyamory, isn't it? Like the fact that people can make relationship with multiple people, right? And everybody's content with it to certain degree. So I don't know. It really depends on the perspective, but then I guess it's also the fact that it physically makes people not being able to touch another human, like not even doesn't have to be a sexual touch, just the physical holding hands or something. That we know that it was already a problem when Joseph and Lilith that scene when they were lying in the hammocks and then like trying to hold each other's hands and then suddenly just like felt like they can't. So that was, I think, a problem.
Yeah, it seems like they can't separate the kind of actually, I suppose you wouldn't necessarily want to separate the sexual intimacy from the interpersonal intimacy, because it's still like I suppose the thing that you're trying to construct from the Oankali perspective is not just a sexual relationship among three parties, but like a family unit, as it were, or a reproductive unit that's going to be like working together to raise a child, as it were.
I understand.
Evolutionary point of view. So that's it's intimacy beyond just the sexual component.
Because I was just thinking, because if you wanted to control just the intimacy, you could literally make, for example, them like humans not being able to feel arousal without the presence of the uloi, like, for example, right? Everything else would be fine, but like if there's any arousal needed, basically you need the blue Oankali pill.
Yeah, but it's you got to zoom out to the broader evolutionary perspective on the reproductive unit, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just about the sexual intimacy; it's about the family, pair bonding to maintain the kind of the social unit of the family,
absolutely,
in order to function, to raise the child.
Yeah. So it makes sense when you're actually thinking about it and break it down.
Which represents quite a depth of insight, I think, on the way that this stuff would work out biologically from Octavia.
True. Honestly, it's really well thought through. Back to the chapter. The story progresses with Tino continue cutting trees when he saw Akin tasting a large caterpillar, a huge one that was almost the size of Akin's foreman. It was bright red and spotted with what appeared tufts of stiff black fur. It was a very poisonous caterpillar, which could even kill a human. It didn't need to sting, but just a touch of those tufts would be enough to put a human down, an adult human, in fact. Tino saw it and froze. Akin knew of those facts and eventually allowed the caterpillar to go back onto a tree. He knew that the insect was not poisonous where it touched, as its pale underbelly was safe to touch. And we are told a bit more detail here about the nature of modifications by the uloi. It ate other insects. It even ate small frogs and toads. Some uloi had given it characteristic of another crawling creature, a small multi-legged worm-like Peripatus. Now both caterpillar and Peripatus could project a kind of glue to snare prey and hold it until it could be consumed. And those caterpillars were basically a means to allow trees to mature and grow and without being eaten by other insects.
Okay, yeah. So they're doing a bit of ecological engineering to create some creatures with a niche that serves to function there in their like plan to rejuvenate the ecosystem.
Yeah, but at the same time, we are told about like anything colorful in nature is usually poisonous and you should steer away from it. But the fact that, like things that are so poisonous to kill it's evolution is crazy, isn't it? Because, a human, you could be a full-grown man and just bite into this poisonous colorful frog and you die. And then there's some animals that evolved alongside that, been feeding on those animals, and they've developed evolved resistance, or at least means to counter the poison in them. And it's just like a evolutionary arms race, basically, to get more poisonous versus how to quicker a resolution of that poison within your organism. And it's just and all the other animals that accidentally touch you or eat you, and they're just gone.
Yep. And if you're not a participant in that arms race, then
you're screwed.
Yeah. Take a step back. Yep. The sort of big colourful caterpillars are fun-looking things, though, aren't they?
Oh, they're honestly beautiful, and I absolutely love the camouflage that some of them they have, like the ones that look like, for example, a head of a snake. I think that's the greatest one I've ever seen. Is really the camouflage in nature is just incredibly beautiful.
I really like the ones that look like heather. They're like green and black with little purplish pink tufts. Because they look exactly like a stem of a piece of heather.
I see.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
No, honestly, it's incredible. Like, and back in the GCSE biology, when we were told about the white moths and gray moths, about like the pollution and how like the survival, and this very standard example of evolution of like which moth will survive, what environment and adaptation to environment, and it's like things like this. It's a small part of the you do learn about GCSE, but it's not just moths. It's like everywhere in nature is necessary to have this adaptation. Man, who would have thought that GCSE biology would be useful to understand this stuff?
Yeah, who knows? It's interesting that the Oankali are perfectly happy to create things that are poisonous to humans, though. It's not like it seems like they should probably have factored out the poison that affects the humans if they're reintroducing the humans to this environment.
I know, right?
Maybe.
But then again, like to be honest, I was just thinking, there's probably, I don't know, like what the estimation currently is, the amount of species on the planet, right? And we know maybe like the undersea, like maybe 10% of the undersea species.
I mean, I imagine that's if we're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is kind of that there's a difficult bit of a definitional issue when you start to be like, how do we count the number of bacterial and viral?
Exactly. Like, so that's what I'm alluding to. So the Oankali came to Earth, right? And they were like, oh, okay. So basically this species that we are interested to trade with, like basically blew the planet to smithereens, and it's so radioactive that some of us have died. Whatever survived, let's modify it so it can survive the radiation, radioactive fallout, and, let's see, and like repopulate the planet with plants and whatever. But considering the amount of species, let's say like during the nuclear war, like 95, or maybe even 99% of species have, went extinct. It's still, the 1% is still going to be a lot. So I just cannot imagine like the Oankali just, spending, like modifying them one by one. The bacteria, maybe bacteria not, but like the bit multi-cellular organisms. It's gonna be long job to do.
I imagine they're kind of picking out, sort of key species for particular ecological purposes, right? Pick one that can have some useful function if you change it, because otherwise, it would be a bit of a gargantuan project.
But I mean, you say that, but like ecosystems are very, there's a balance, right? And like if you remove one thing, of course, like I'm for 100% eradicating all mosquitos, because fuck them. But like some other like insects, for example, like if you did, like there's gonna be some imbalance in the ecosystem, and a lot of other things can come in and fill that gap. But still, it's not going to be that easy to balance it out. Like the great example of eradicating all the sparrows in China, and then basically getting famine because of the locust population, and stuff like that. So it makes me think that like I'm just awaiting, for example, like this low village suddenly being overloaded by locusts, destroying everything, for example. So
yeah, I imagine that the Oankali must have some particular insight into predicting ecological outcomes, or otherwise they probably wouldn't be as good as they are at what they do. But I suppose I don't know much about the biology, kind of the species that survives mass extinction events, but presumably, just off the top of my head, species that survive mass extinctions must be more likely to be like kind of generalists, like not super highly specialized niches that are dependent on a bunch of other stuff in order to exist, because otherwise, the mass extinction will break a bunch of those dependencies, so all of those particular like highly interrelated webs will end up collapsing and killing off the particular species.
Yeah.
So the ones who found their niche in something more generalizable will have been the ones that survived in the past. So presumably many of the surviving species in the new ecosystem that is beginning to develop on the new Earth will have been relatively ecologically simple.
Yeah.
Because they will be the ones that survived long enough to get picked up by the Oankali.
I wonder what deep sea creatures would look like if there was any difference, and if there would be also the question is does the deep the fallout of the radioactive fallout drop at the bottom of the sea and affect the species, or does it get washed off?
I mean, the
question mark.
I don't know. I expect the super deep ocean is almost unaffected by much of the stuff that's going on up at this level, right? I would have thought that very little gets down to the real depths, but I mean, as long as there are still a few things up here dying and periodically ending up on the ocean floor, then I don't know if much would be likely to.
I mean,
to
if you can
impact
survive that pressure of water, I mean, I don't think radioactivity would do much to you.
So things like the thermal vent type organisms, they already have insanely highly resistant to DNA and genetic damage.
Well, yeah, that's where we got. That's thanks to them, those beings, that we can do all the modern science because of the restriction enzymes they have. They're resistant to heat. So
yeah, and the TAC polymerase that we use in PCR, or we used to. There's some better thermal ones, but yeah, the Thermus aquaticus, I think, something like that. It's a deep sea hydrothermal vent dweller that has a polymerase that's super thermostable, so we can heat it up.
Yeah.
But the same thing applies to them for radioactive based damage, right? They have a high level of ability to recover from damage, be it induced by extreme heat or presumably by radiation sources.
Yeah.
I'd guess, but I don't know. I mean, some of the other stuff that's not on hydrothermal vents, that's just in the deep plane. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how likely it would be that radioactive material would get down there and accumulate, and then what the concentration would be like. That they're so sparsely placed down there anyway that I don't know. I think they. My bet is they'd probably be fine.
Yeah, I guess if you have such a good DNA repair systems, then I think it probably would be fine, and bacteria that grow around there would probably even be more adaptable to such environment. So, but
I mean, even the deep sea anglerfish type things, the ones that are just really sparsely placed and will very occasionally manage to catch something. I suspect that things would be dilute enough and far enough away from basically everything else that they'd be more or less unaffected.
Potentially, yeah.
Very little is known about them, right? We don't know how old they are, I suppose, and how many. I mean, a few of the species that have been caught, maybe they've managed to do some phylogenetic analysis on them. I'm not sure, but no, I'd bet that they're probably really, really old.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering the fact that they can survive. But the thing is, I wonder if you can even bring them to the surface without the decompression destroying their internal structure.
I think some of them have been. I'm not
because for example,
remember, but I think you have to bring them up in pressure vessels, basically.
Yeah, because for example, if you the infamous Blob Fish, right? The poor thing is it looks disgusting, or because it was caught and it was decompressed so quickly that its body exploded in a way. Whereas underwater it actually looked completely different. So, I mean, yeah, maybe some chambers that are continually compressed and then maybe reduce the compression over time. I don't know. Maybe the fish requires that type of pressure to maintain its structure. I don't know. It's interesting.
Quite possibly. Yeah. No. I mean, if you went that deep, it would be actually really hard to build a pressure vessel that you could bring up to the surface and not have it just explode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. I've never really thought about it.
Have something to read upon, to see if there's any anglerfish or anything that being brought to surface and survived, or is it just dead, basically?
Yeah. I think mostly people just like go down there and take photos because it's so hard to get stuff. Well, it's so hard to get down there and it's so hard to get back up again. But, yeah. Who knows?
I guess let's go back to the chapter after this nice tangent. So back to the caterpillar. So Tino freaked out at Akin after the boy was free from the caterpillar. He shouted at him to never do anything so crazy again. But as he did, someone grabbed him from behind. Akin, far too late, realized that there was a smell of strangers, resistor raiders, who were stealing children. He tried to fight, but was just a child, and no matter his struggles, he wasn't able to do anything. In the meantime, Tino was surrounded by 4 other men who already managed to hit him. They realized who he was. They recognized he's the little kid, and Tino introduced himself as Agustino Lil from Phoenix, because they were also from the same village. As Tino was telling that and searching for a way to get his hand on an axe, Akin realized that the strangers were holding long wood and metal sticks, guns. And these men knew Tino. One of them knew Tino, and Tino did not like that one. Tino was afraid. Akin had never seen him more afraid. And Akin considered stabbing the one holding him with a stinger on his tongue, but what would happen then? So he did nothing and just watched Tino, hoping the man would know what was the best course of action.
That's an interesting point there, because like Akin's being very
logical and
sort of intelligently and logically foresighted there, right? Yeah, he's thinking it through.
Yes, that like considering he has no physical strength and the only advantage he has is the stinger, it's better not to use it and count that Tino's will come up with some good idea.
Because I mean, if he stings and kills one of these guys, then the others are probably going to try and kill him, right?
Yeah. So this is what I think an important dialogue from the book. So I thought I'll read it. There was no guns in Phoenix when I left, Tinos was saying. So the sticks were guns. No, and you didn't want there to be any, did you? The same man asked. He made a point of jabbing Tino with his gun. Tino began to be a little less afraid and more angry. If you think you can use those to kill Oankali, you're as stupid as I thought you were. The man swung his gun up so it almost touched Tino's nose. Is it humans you mean to kill? Tino asked very softly. Are there so many humans left? Are our numbers increasing so fast? Man, Tino's on fire. Like, honestly, this is, I don't think it's the best way to aggravate them, but then he was getting angry at them, so...
Yeah, that's may not be the best idea to antagonize them, but he makes a very good point.
Yeah. The men didn't like what he said. They called him a traitor, and Tino's response was he wanted family, something that they couldn't get. The men checked Akin over because he looked the most human, the most human-looking child. And eventually they decided to take the kid, but what would they do with Tino? Tino said that they can't take the boy because he's still nursing and he'll starve if they take him. The men were not so sure, that brought a bit of uncertainty to them after hearing that, but none of them decided to check Akin's mouth. But one of them decided, to check Akin's mouth. The moment he did, they were all startled seeing the great tongue, and because Akin started crying. Now and then Oankali had hearing more sensitive than most humans realized and would be able to hear him. The chapter ends with Tino saying that he's just a baby and you can't get the baby to shut up by scaring him. Akin reached out to Tino hoping that the resistors would be less likely to hurt the two of them together if they see the baby being quiet and cooperative with Tino. But before that could happen, the man who first recognized Tino stepped behind and smashed the wooden end of the gun into the back of Tino's head. Knocked unconscious immediately. But then the man hit him again at the base of the neck, like a man killing a poisonous snake. Akin screamed in terror and anguish. He knew human anatomy well enough to know that if Tino were not dead, he would die very soon, unless an Oankali would help him. And there was no Oankali nearby. The resistors left Tino to his death and strode into the forest with screaming Akin. And that's where the chapter ends.
Yeah, Akin's continuing to be very astute here, right? He's pretending to be like a normal baby, crying, and sort of acting as though he'll be, like reaching out to Tino, and like so that if they give him to Tino, he can be quiet, so that they'll try to have a reason to keep him alive. It's he's very sharp.
No, absolutely. So far, Akin, considering his circumstances, has made the best choices for the course of action he needed to take. Because yes, if you had the physical strength of an adult man, then, you could, and if you had the speed and the strength like Lilith had, or any adult construct, then yeah, you could probably do some weird stuff by biting them or stinging them, and probably surviving 1 or 2 gunshots. But considering it's a baby, then yeah, he couldn't do much.
Acting with intelligent self-interest, as they say.
Absolutely.
And Tino here in dire straits, it seems. Hopefully they heard.
Like the fact that they just went and cold-blooded, in cold blood almost killed him. Like the fact that they probably didn't want to waste the ammunition, but the fact that they just went straight away and at his, it is crazy. That it's okay. Basically, there's so little humans left. Let's just kill whatever little what there is left. Because logic.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a if you're not in agreement with the
men of the gun,
the in group. If you're not in agreement with the men in the armed group, then you're a threat to them. So
yeah, and the fact is, they brought guns, meaning that, this is one thing that I'm the most interested in and scared for, is that they start talking about the South having weapons, right? I wonder to what level do they have weapons? If they have guns, they must have cannons. If they have cannons, how far do they go with those, right? I feel like this is I mean, I don't know to what degree it's going to be the civil war that I've been predicting, but I have this strange feeling that it might be quite substantial at some point. The humans are arming themselves against the Oankali.
I mean, I suppose it might be they might be limiting themselves to small arms for the moment, because I mean, I imagine that they're concerned about to what level the Oankali will sort of tolerate them doing stuff, if you see what I mean, right? And so if you were of the mindset of, we want to resist the Oankali, then you'd certainly want to keep it, secret until such time as you had to actually engage with them, right? Because if you're just sort of openly manufacturing artillery pieces, then that's going to get their attention, and it's not going to go well, right?
I don't know. I just imagine this situation. It probably doesn't happen, but I have this feeling that somebody smart out there is already trying to make a nuclear bomb. I have this weird, tempting feeling that there is already someone having fun with radioactive materials. Be like, oh, we had a radioactive war that basically wiped us out. Yeah, I know it's smart to get rid of Oankali using the same means.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems very unlikely the Oankali would have left any enriched nuclear material just lying around on the planet. That's the sort of thing you'd want to pick up, and making that is not at all trivial.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, making a nuclear bomb once you have enriched radioactive material is a moderately difficult engineering challenge.
It's just a bomb basically that requires a bit of triggering, but getting the enriched material is
good timing and shaped charges expertise basically. But the actually enriching the stuff is extremely difficult. That's just taking a look at the Iran nuclear program, right? Their enrichment facilities and the centrifuges, it requires a huge amount of very precise engineering effort to extract these, it's unbelievably tiny concentrations of very particular radioactive nuclei, and you've got you're doing this gas centrifuge stuff. It's very, very technically difficult to enrich uranium.
Yeah.
So it's if they can't bootstrap their way up to much more than glass windows at the moment, I really can't see them doing anything with nuclear weapons for quite a while.
But the thing is, but one other thing that I'm worried about is that, you know what they might do? It's not that like they will aim the weapons at the Oankali, but they will aim the weapons at the humans that decided to live with the Oankali, right? That they will bypass the okay, we're not gonna touch you, but like you're not gonna have what you want in the form of the humans, and then just shoot at the humans that decided to live with the Oankali, and it's just I mean, the Oankali said, "Well, if you die, you die. Shame. We have your own copy. We have your copies, but you know."
Yeah, not terribly reassuring, I suppose. But I mean, that they are, all inside the village that is this nascent spacecraft thing for now. So they have a certain amount of.
I mean, they have guns.
There.
Then the best artillery that ever existed was a trebuchet. Let's be honest. The finest human invention. So 300 meters. Okay, I'm not gonna go into the meme area, but yeah, it's not like that you can't develop like an explosive. You have a gunpowder, you can have explosive and lob it, with like any sort of catapult or trebuchet. So and those are relatively quite quick to build. So,
well, I suppose if the tree will break an axe, then the houses are probably a pretty reasonable bomb shelter.
To be fair, I think that might be the case. Like if the Oankali thought like, oh, they're making gunpowder, let's just reinforce the houses to make them like, bomb resistant. That'd be cool. Like, you're just walking around the village, they bomb everything. They're like, there's basically no standing tree around the village, and there's this lush village, just like as if nothing happened, right? Not even like a burn mark. That would really chip into somebody's pride.
Yeah. It's just reminded me a little bit of like when I lived in Geneva. For a long while, not while I was there, but for a long while prior to when I lived there, it was mandatory for basically every residence to have its own nuclear bomb shelter.
Okay.
So, like, basically all houses constructed in Switzerland for, I forget what the actual years were like, they all have a nuclear bomb shelter in the basement. It's like, like a foot thick concrete walls and like this massive, like, vault door thing. But it's kind of, it's weird for like, if you live anywhere else, like, there's no, like, massive bomb shelters in the basement, but you go to Switzerland and, like, everywhere's got a massive bomb shelter. It's yeah. I think it's a hangover from the World War II era.
Yeah.
But their whole national redoubt strategy, I think it kind of it persisted in the mentality. But yeah, and it's still required for things like at least I think it is still for like big public spaces. So if you go to like the the multi-story car park under like a shopping center or whatever, there's a big, massive, even larger vault door bunker under there that can accommodate like everyone who was in the shopping center at the time if they sound the like nuclear alarm.
Okay.
It's it's a weird quirk.
Isn't also in Switzerland that they rigged the bridges with explosive just in case if any invasion happens again, they just blow up any entries to the country?
Oh yeah, during the war, because they were encircled by the Axis powers and they didn't want to. The kind of Swiss neutrality thing is always contested a little bit. Like people think that they were too neutral, but they didn't really have any choice. But to sort of accommodate the Axis powers to some degree. But they only permitted them to use their railways to transport like wounded soldiers and I think certain classes of goods. But they really needed those assets. To be able to transport them through Switzerland. So they really didn't want any of the trains tunnels because, like through the Alps and stuff, there's all of these extended tunnel systems that the Swiss trains run on. And the Swiss had all of those rigged to blow. So if there was ever any like suggestion that the Axis powers were going to invade, they just blow up all of the tunnels, and they were all trained in like guerrilla warfare stuff. So they had this national redoubt strategy where basically they'd retreat to the bunkers, and they had these insane bunkers with kitted out for ridiculous periods of survival, and they were all, in some like geographically inaccessible location where if you wanted to approach it, you'd have to approach it over like this tiny mountain road attached to the side of a mountainside, all of which was rigged to blow, and all of which was like covered by, like several gun emplacements with like 30mm cannons and stuff, right? So it's just like, if you'd attempted to invade Switzerland, it would just have been an unbelievable bloodbath for you. So it's just like, their strategy was basically, try it, you will regret it.
I guess,
and it kind of worked.
Yeah, I mean, it worked, but I feel like if they really wanted to, I feel like, deploying planes would like probably sort a bit of it, but still.
I mean, even then, it would have been tricky. Yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, like I think it's the Swiss like infantry units. They trained a lot in guerrilla tactics for the time. They all had they had these crazy rifles. I think it's the Sturmgewehr 57. I think it was 57. I'll be the wrong number, but it's this crazy accurate like light submachine gun style rifle. But there was also like a sniper rifle quality of like accuracy. It was had an insane rate of fire. Plus, it also had this thing where you could mount like a rocket propelled anti-tank grenade thing to the front of it, and like fire it off like a mortar. It's crazy. And they had these like squads of like bike mounted commandos who could like cycle through the mountains and stuff. It was just this like and engaging with their infantry on like their home territory, even if you had like armored divisions of tanks, would have just been an unbelievable nightmare. I think that was the whole point of their military strategy, was to make it like utterly unappealing to invade the country, because like your losses would be insane.
Kudos to the Switzerland, but everybody has to make some tough choices in the prospect of a war. But anyway, I guess let's go to the chapter 1 prediction of the part 2 Phoenix, I guess. So in chapter 1, I think we will see the journey Akin survived going to the human village with his captors. I have this feeling that he will still try to pretend to be just a child and try to absorb and get more information from them. Like to understand what's the situation. But it might be the point that because his listening skills, they might realize how intelligent he is actually, and let's see. That was my prediction.
Okay. Gonna sort of try and stay under the radar and conceal.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe this chapter will like jump between Akin and Tino's perspective. Maybe Tino and Lilith's, like just going from the low village to Phoenix village, and how they're like eventually meeting at somewhere in the middle. Okay.
So not to leave us too hanging on whether or not Tino's still alive, I suppose.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe just like just a nice cliffhanger. Like, is he alive or is he not? Let's see.
I know how long they're going to leave us in limbo on that one.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my prediction.
Okay.
Awesome.
In that case, I think that's everything for this episode.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We're Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on our website, xenothesis.com. I was Michael Glinka.
I was Richard Acton.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.